I am Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I've read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He is the author of the book Leadership Accelerators, and this is his debut book, no other than Mr. Michael Delisser. Welcome, Mr. Michael, and can you please introduce more about yourself that I missed?
Sure. I'm originally from New York. I grew up 20 miles north of New York City, and I currently live in Colorado, and I've been doing leadership development for my entire life, and my dad did it before me, and I was fortunate enough to watch him doing it when I was 15 years old, and I developed the passion for it and been doing it my whole career. And I finally, after it took over 15 years to write this book, but I finally got it done, and it covers a lot of the things that I teach executives and managers.
Mr. Michael, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Hoping for more and more empowering books like this to come. The title uses the word accelerators. How does the specific communication skill act as a true accelerator for leadership impact as opposed to just being good things to do?
Well, and if I go back to the beginning, as I mentioned, when I was 15, I watched my dad coach executives that had been fired, and almost all of them had been fired for poor communication skills. And so very early on, I learned that when leaders aren't effective at communicating, they end up getting into trouble as they get promoted higher and higher in their organization. So the things that I cover in this book are the things that I've seen over the last 20 years plus. I've seen leaders really struggle with and or get into trouble because they don't do these things well, or they don't have high self-awareness and skill in these three accelerator areas that I cover in the book.
Interesting indeed. Many leaders feel torn between driving for results and nurturing relationships. How does your framework resolve this classic tension, showing that they are not mutually exclusive but mutually reinforcing?
And actually, the key to kind of put these two things together you're talking about is that for people to get results when you're in a management role, you must get results through others. And so if you haven't really developed your leadership skills and your communication skills, then you end up being in a situation where you're focused on a result, but you are not good at getting people on board, and you're not communicating in a way that motivates them. So it's your leadership skills and your communication skills are going to be what is critical to help you get results. And a lot of leaders don't realize that they end up focusing on being a manager and just focusing on the result, and they don't realize along the way that that they're doing things that cause their teams to not appreciate their style or not be as motivated to do the work.
Most leaders are expecting the what. Your book focuses on how.
Mm-hmm.
What is the most common blind spot you see in even experienced leaders when it comes to the how of their communication?
The thing I see the most is they have ineffective communication habits that they've developed much earlier in life, and they've never really learned to stop using those habits. And an example would be maybe you grew up in a large family and you're communicating, to get attention, you have to interrupt each other, because there's many kids and they're all trying to get attention from their parents. And then they bring that same habit of interrupting into the workplace, and they end up interrupting their boss, interrupting their customers, interrupting their direct reports and their employees, and they don't even realize they're doing it. So the biggest challenge is for them to develop a self-awareness of any habits they may have that are causing them to be less effective as leaders.
If you had to isolate one communication skill that has the most dramatic ripple effect on both strengthening relationships and driving results, what would it be and why?
I would probably, and there's a few things that I could think of, but the one that I think is probably the biggest issue is having high self awareness of how you come across to others and making other people feel valued. And so, in the way that you speak to others, are you speaking in a way that shows that you care about what their concerns are? Are you speaking in a way that demonstrates that you care about the outcomes? And are you helping them connect the dots between their work and the outcomes of the organization so that they can feel they have a deeper purpose? So if you get really good at helping people understand the value of what they do and making them feel valued, then I think you get much better results out of your team.
On specific skills and techniques, Mr. Michael, many leaders say, I'm a good listener, but your book likely goes deeper. What is a critical difference between hearing someone and listening to understand in a way that actually accelerates trust and insight?
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that because a lot of leaders think they are good listeners, but in my book I refer to one piece of research that suggests that 95% of the people out there think they're better at it than they are, and they're really not as good as they think. So the key things to being really effective as a listener is one, you have to be present. And in the earlier chapters, I talk about how we tend to be very distracted frequently. We're multitasking, our phone goes off, our email comes in, and we end up not giving the person our full attention. So, number one, you have to be there and be present and make that person the most important person. Because when you're multitasking, the message you're sending to those people are, you're not important enough for my full attention, which is not a good message. And then the second thing is how you respond to people, and making sure that you're picking up either the keywords or the feelings in particular. If you hear excitement or you hear um, sadness or upset, making sure you're acknowledging that and making people feel like you're not just hearing their words but also understanding their feelings. And a big portion of the book talks about emotional intelligence and how do you build your ability to control your own emotions but also be able to hear the emotions of others and respond well to them.
Interesting indeed. Mr. Michael, empowering. What are some specific phrases or question structures that instantly shift a conversation from leader giving direction to a leader empowering ownership in their team?
I would say that the biggest challenge leaders have is their intentions are good. They want to tell people the answer to whatever it is that they're working on. The challenge is if people come to you and you're constantly just giving them the answers, then they end up becoming more dependent on you. And probably one of the most important skills a leader can have is asking the right questions that helps the person discover their own answer. And so when you give a person a chance to share their ideas and you ask questions that help guide them to find their own solutions, they see you as a more effective leader, but they also feel more self-confident because they found the solution themselves. You just led them, with questions that help them find it. So as much as possible, when you allow people to share their ideas, making sure that you're proving that you heard their ideas and whenever possible, allowing them to find their own solutions. That typically is what's going to make the biggest difference.
Communicating in a crisis. In a high stakes, high pressure situation, communication often defaults to command and control. What are the key accelerators for maintaining trust and clarity when there's no time for lengthy discussion?
Yeah, and that really goes back to the emotional intelligence piece of it, because when people are in crisis, they tend to react based on emotions, not on rational thinking. So one of the most important things you can do is be aware of what triggers you and when you're not thinking rationally, when you're allowing your emotions to control you. And then the second piece of that is making sure that you are acknowledging the emotions of others in the room as well. So, what are you doing to make sure that when a crisis is happening, you're speaking to people's fears, you're responding to their concerns, and you're making sure that they know that their concerns are important to you. When you do those things, they feel trust. They feel like you have their back and that you are supporting their concerns and that you care about them as well. And when crisis happens, that's one of the most important things you can do is give off a kind of a calming demeanor, controlling your own emotions, but also acknowledging the emotions of others.
Mr. Michael, on application and mindset, what is the role of leaders' ego in sabotaging their communication effectiveness? And what is the first step in taming it?
You have to develop high self awareness. I talk in the book about the difference between self perception and self awareness. And self perception is how you see yourself, but it's not necessarily accurate unless you confirm it through others. And when you confirm it through others, that's when you have high self awareness because your self perceptions match the perceptions of others. So I think when people really make mistakes, it's because they did not have self awareness and they did not realize how they were coming across. And because of that, it puts them in bad situations. And a lot of that is ego driven, as you were referring to. When people allow their egos to step in or they allow their egos to be triggered, one of the things I talk about in the book is how do you become more self aware of your triggers? How do you get other people involved in helping you understand them? So, in those key moments that matter, you don't allow yourself to be triggered and do something based on ego instead of what's best for the situation.
From broadcast to dialogue, Mr. Michael, leaders are often expected to have all the answers. How do you coach them to shift from broadcasting their solutions to facilitating a dialogue that unlocks the team's collective intelligence?
Well, and that gets into a little more of understanding the overall team's personalities and where their strengths are and where their weaknesses are. I think a lot of times leaders think they should have all the answers, as you mentioned, but in reality, we all have strengths and weaknesses, and a lot of times that's tied to our personality type. For example, if you are very results driven and structured, you may be very task focused and not as you know thoughtful or caring about other people's feelings inadvertently. And so when you surround yourself with people that have those other strengths, you can count on them to help you out in those situations where you need to be more personable. And the opposite is true is if you're more of a people person, but you're not very structured, if you get really good at understanding who on your team is strong with structure, then you can go to them and have them review what it is the situation is and get the perspective of someone who's more structured. And I'll tell you, for example, when I was writing this book, I'm a people person, I'm an idea person, but I'm not very structured or results driven. So I got my reviewers I deliberately sought out reviewers who were very results driven and very structured to help me make the book stronger. And that's really what a good leader does is they leverage the strengths of their teams and they collectively learn what the potential vulnerabilities of those teams are and how they can collectively overcome them so that they don't hurt their performance.
The storytelling advantage, Mr. Michael, how can leader intentionally use storytelling and metaphor to make vision and strategy stick in a way what that bullet pointed slide deck never could?
Yeah, and I do a lot of teaching and presentation skills as well. And one of the most important things I teach right up front is people don't remember bullet points. They don't even remember what's on your slides. But what they do remember is your stories, the metaphors if they're very relatable, or the analogies that are very relatable. So as a leader, one of the most important things you can do is share those stories that connect to people because stories have the ability to reach people at a logical level, at a emotional level, and also establish more credibility because you're telling if it's a true story about a situation. An example I'll give you: there was an executive who was doing his kind of State of the Union address with his company, And he told a story. They were a company that did medical blood testing and things like that. And he told a story about a family where they found early that someone had a dangerous cancer, and they got the whole family to get tested because it was genetic, and they were able to create much better outcomes for the whole family because they caught it early. And he deliberately included this story about the family coming into his office and thanking him for saving their lives for the most part. Even though it was a business meeting, he was sharing a story about a customer or a patient and their family outcome. And then he turned it and said, look, that wasn't just me, that was all of you on the team as well. All of you contributed to saving this family. So no matter what position you're in, one way or another, you contributed. And so he made this story. It was a very heart-wrenching story and a true story that was meaningful. And he made them realize that they were part of making that good outcome happen. So when you're really good at storytelling, I mean, in an hour presentation, people may not remember 90% of what you said, but they will remember the stories if they're done well.
Definitely. They will stick to it for sure. Mr. Michael, as a leadership accelerators, as well as a debut author, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
You know, the reason I wrote this book was there's a lot of great books out there that give good knowledge or give good theory, but what I wanted to do is help create a broader impact on helping people improve their relationships at work and at home. And so the way the book is designed, I deliberately included lots of stories and examples, lots of self-assessments, and then also lots of activities you can do to build skill once you do the self-assessments. And the reason I did it that way is because my overall purpose is to help people improve their relationship and their results, and through improving their communication skills. And so I part of why I wrote this book is to create a tool that people can pick up and immediately, within reading a chapter, they can increase their self-awareness and start to practice getting better at it, because I would like to have the largest impact that I can on people and helping them really become effective at communicating and improving their relationships. And I felt like this book was one way to do that. But my longer term goal is to just have that broadest impact I can, because, you know, in the world we're in right now, there's a lot of poor communication and there's a lot of negativity, and the degree to which we can all become more effective in our communication, we can potentially create a more positive environment for everyone.
Positive environment for sure, and good luck to your goals, and looking forward for more success, Mr. Michael. Looking for more empowering books like this to come. And what will be your piece of advice? A piece of advice for those people out there who want to be like you.
Well, the first thing I would say is don't be like me, be like you, right? Be yourself. And part of that is becoming really aware of what your strengths are and leveraging them, finding out what your passions are, and sticking to roles or finding ways to use your passions. That's one of the things I do. I coach a lot of leaders and students in college, you know, MBA students. I've done a lot of coaching, and I really talk to them about making sure they stay close to their strengths and stay close to their passions, because if you take a job for the money, it'll be great to have the money, but somewhere along the line, if you don't enjoy what you're doing, you'll be miserable in your job. So my advice would be is to follow your passion, find out what your strengths are. And if you can find something in your life that allows you to use both your strengths and your passions, you'll get excited to get up to work every day. You'll have a great career, and you'll do more. You'll do great things for the world in whatever area that you work.
Follow your passion, people, please, and share to the world. And Mr. Michael, thank you for that advice. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
You know, there's two books that I really like a lot. The one is Good to Great by Jim Collins, and in that book, he really covers that concept that I just shared about following your passion and also what your strengths are. In that book, there's a concept called the hedgehog concept, and it talks about three things that the companies that made the jump from good to great did They followed their passion. They did what they could be the best in the world at, and they found a kind of a financial model that worked that allowed them to be successful. And I when I coach people individually, I say the same thing as what Jim Collins said to those companies. If you could do those things, if you can follow your passion and your skills, and find some way to be successful financially in a model that works with that, you'll be just as you'll be able to make that jump from good to great as well. So that's one of the two books. The other one is one called The Power of Full Engagement. And what I love about that book, it talks about how we tend to work through a day and never take breaks. And the ultimate outcome of that is we become less effective as the day goes along because we get exhausted and we're not taking moments to refresh and just create ways to get ourselves, our energy back up. So it identifies 4 different types of energy we need to learn how to manage. And when you're really good at managing those 4 types of energy, you have more energy to go to work, you're more effective, you're more productive. So those would be the 2 books that I enjoy the most, that I think have the biggest impact on people when they read them.
Thank you for that recommended books, Mr. Michael. And how can a leader consciously craft a communication style that is authentically them, but also consistently inspires and motivates others?
I think finding yourself authentically really comes down to knowing your own purpose and knowing your own strengths, and so personality type is a key one, right? So if you've ever done a personality assessment of any kind, go back and look at those results and learn about what it tells you about what's important for you and where you're more likely to be strong and where your potential weaknesses are based on maybe your least effective or least predominant personality preference. But I think overall, people really need to develop a high self-awareness of their strengths and their weaknesses, understand what triggers them, and also making sure that they know what habits they have currently that might be causing them to be less effective, or maybe hurting their relationships because they're not aware that they're doing these ineffective habits. And in the book, I spend quite a bit of time providing these self-assessments where people can develop their awareness and all these things I just mentioned. And by doing that, when you have high self-awareness, it sets you up for success. It sets you up to be able to be the most effective leader that you can be, or most effective spouse or friend or whatever it might be, because these things are universal, whether it's work or home. If you can get really good at developing and strengthening your emotional intelligence, replacing ineffective habits with effective habits, and understanding your personality needs and the needs of others and how to respond differently. You do those 3 things and you'll be in good shape no matter what you're doing.
Totally, you're in a good shape. And Mr. Michael, could effective leaders communication be a secret weapon against the rampant burnout we see in today's workforce? If so, how?
I can think a couple ways that it can be a secret weapon. One is that the world is moving towards more of AI taking over technical skills. And if you think about it, most people get promoted based on their technical skills. If you have 5 people doing the same job, and they usually promote the one that's best at that job. The problem is with each level of leadership, the higher you go, the more important it becomes to be an effective communicator. And with AI replacing a lot of the technical skills, it makes it even more important you're a strong communicator, because that's what will make you stand out as a leader, not your technical skills, because there's a good chance at some point AI will replace some of your technical skills. So as AI grows, it becomes even more critical that you're a strong communicator to make sure you're standing out as different as your technical skills become less and less critical. So that's probably the main thing that I would say is most important in terms of it being a superpower. The other thing too is that to get things done through others, and that's what leaders do, right? They have to have teams that are willing to perform. People's ability and willingness to give extra discretionary effort is very directly tied to how they feel valued and whether or not they feel like they're making a difference. So your ability to be really effective at speaking with people on the job and helping them understand the difference they're making and making them feel valued that will cause you to retain people for longer. It'll cause them to give more effort. And so when you do those things, it also is kind of like a superpower because it allows you to get more out of your team, and they want to work for you, and they're more motivated and excited to work for the organization.
Mr. Michael, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season. Abstract poetry in second season. My book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in second season. And my food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 in fourth season. I'm a baby podcast, Law 101 and Mental Health 101. Love Letters in third season, and my movie 101 review and music 101 in fourth season, and science 101 and sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Michael, ultimately, what is the legacy a leader leaves through their communication? Is it simply a trail of achieved goals, or is it something more profound in people you've led?
I think the biggest thing is how you make people feel. People forget what you say overall, but they do remember how you made them feel. So if you are good at communicating and finding ways to show people how much you value them, show the difference they're making, make them feel like their ideas are valued, ultimately you want your legacy to be that people remember you as the best leader they had. And usually that's going to be because you've really made them feel valued. So I would say that, when it comes to legacy, that's what you want to do, is make sure you're consciously going out of your way to make people realize that you appreciate them and value them.
Mr. Michael Delisser, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So can you please invite our listeners to support your debut book, your advocacy, your business, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Yeah, so I do three things. I do facilitating strategic planning for leadership teams. I do customized leadership development programs, and I coach people one-on-one. But you can find out about all of that by visiting delisser.com, DELISSER.com, and that's where you'll find my book as well, a link to go see the book, and that's how you can support me, and hopefully I can make a difference for you.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Michael Delisser, because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering leaders to come, more and more empowering folks like this to come. So, Mr. Michael, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing you on the Food 101.
Yes, definitely. And as well as my abstract essay, I'm going to invite you over there. And let's talk about the writing process of leadership accelerators. More to come, people. See you soon.
Thank you.